Hey everyone, this is Mason with Mountain Rose Herbs, and you're listening to the Herbal Radio Podcast. Before we jump into the show, I wanted to take a moment to tell you about an opportunity to receive exclusive Mountain Rose Herbs discounts, content, and event invites by signing up for our text message community. To opt in, all you need to do is text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-240-8969. We'll then automatically send you a link to submit your information, and that's it. It's that simple. As part of the community, you'll get just one text with exclusive offers every 7 to 14 days. And if you'd like to opt out, that's just as easy. Just text STOP, S-T-O-P, to the same phone number. So again, if you'd like to receive these exclusive offers, just text JOIN to 541-240-8969. Thanks for listening, and now on to the show. Enjoy.
Hello. Welcome to Tea Talks with Jiling, where we share tea, conversations, and camaraderie with visionary herbalists rippling positive change into their communities by connecting people, plants, and place. I'm Jiling, your host, acupuncturist, herbalist, and yoga teacher on Herbal Radio, presented by Mountain Rose Herbs. Make yourself comfortable, pour a cup of your favorite tea, and welcome to today's Tea Talk with Ben Zappin. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Jiling. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you here. Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Benjamin Zappin. I'm a herbalist for a quarter century or so, and a licensed acupuncturist. And I live in Nevada City, in California, in the Sierra foothills. I have been operating the company Five Flavors Herbs with my wife for about 15 years now, between Oakland, California, we used to be in Santa Cruz, and here. So I've maintained a clinical practice for over 20 years and operated a company that has been and continues to be an herbal pharmacy in service to practitioners of all different forms of herbalism, naturopathic doctors, licensed acupuncturists, medical doctors, other professional and lay herbalists. We also have a retail store, so we do get, we're a street level herbal business and get to serve our community directly, and run an extract company, and so have learned the ins and outs of the industry in addition to being a practitioner. And we also just recently started an herb farm, which is really exciting. And the first job I ever got paid to do as a herbalist was wildcrafting. And so that's something I like to talk about and reflect on, that bigger arc of, passion, the intersection of passion and sustainability. And maybe later we can, I'll sing you a song about a wildcrafter. Not an original.
So you have so many different projects going on, from running Five Flavors to starting this new herb farm to teaching classes all over the place. What's a day in the life like for you? How do you juggle all these different projects?
Well, a day in the life, something that's been really exciting since we moved onto our own land, is the rhythm of farm chores. And a day in the life is going out and turning on irrigation and feeding animals, and keeping an eye on things and seeing what needs what care during the day. That our farm is young enough that Ingrid and I are doing all the work. So we're trying to build a bridge to where it'll be a business that'll serve our business and others and be able to employ somebody. But there's a hump to get over there. So, over this past COVID year, we did lots of animal stuff. And so the morning farm chores, this is getting up at 5:45, getting out of bed and hustling and doing that and trying to, you'll appreciate this. We'll water different segments, and I'll integrate Qigong into watering. And I gotta do some self-care, and I have to water. So, I'm gonna try to make both these happen at once. How do I multitask? How do I, while I do my have-tos, take care of our kids, get them off to school. That type of thing, get them oriented, and then jump into meetings. And it's a lot of, a day in the life of us in our remote living while we're building out our company up here. Most of my work as an herbalist or leader of our company has been remote. So for better or worse, it's luxurious and it won't always be this way. I'm spending all my day on Zoom or phone calls, but oftentimes those phone calls are while I'm weeding. And, so I'm spending more time outside than ever, more time connecting with plants than ever, and simultaneously more time on digital devices than ever. So it's interesting that both of those can be true at once.
Yeah, that's a fascinating juxtaposition. And yeah, I love what you said about weaving self-care into the have-to-dos. What an amazing thing to be able to do and learn for yourself. So as far as coming to where you are now, and it sounds like you're kind of in a transition zone from Oakland or Santa Cruz?
Santa Cruz was 12, 13 years ago. Oakland's where we, started our GMP facility and our brick and mortar herbal pharmacy and retail shop. So that's where that still exists. And we're building out and should have permitted in the next month or so another 10,000 square feet to really grow into.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations. For people who are listening who don't know what GMP is, can you explain that a little bit for our listeners?
CGMP is current good manufacturing practices, and it is a set of FDA regulations, that are applied, to pharmacy. But there's CFR 111 is the dietary supplement component of the FDA CGMPs. So we adhere to those, and it's how to track, document purity, potency, strength. How can we, and Mountain Rose obviously adheres to these rigidly. We're good friends with the QA/QC director, Mountain Rose, Stephen Yeager, who we champion and celebrate, who's really mentored us in a lot of ways. He's been a really strong ally. So tip our hat to Stephen and the great work he does over at Mountain Rose. It's how do you identify that the raw materials you're using are what they say they are? How do you document your practices, that they, are consistent, and that your finished product is consistent with the claims that you make on your label, and that it's free from contaminants and including, pesticides, microbes, heavy metals, etc. And is in accordance with laws set forth that determine what is appropriate amounts of any of those things in commerce for dietary supplements.
So getting into the nitty-gritty of the behind the scenes herbal commerce world.
Yeah. And, as a, somewhat have some kernels of anarchic heart in my heart left, but had a lot more. When we chose to pursue this after running our company in our basement for 7 years and having it really grow and be a meaningful form of our livelihood, like so many herbalists, we're like, we know what we're doing. We've been doing this forever. And when the exemption for small businesses went into place, or the exemption was removed, the company's 10 people and under were obliged to conform to GMP. We said, let's do this. This is a meaningful enough part of our, so there's still part of me that's like, what? They're telling me how to do this? We have to pay extra to do this, and somebody has to do paperwork about this? And but my incredulity is softened around, seeing more about what's in commerce and seeing the places where people are breaching these rules that are really just, they're best practices. And you need to document that you're adherent to best practices in order to keep people safe. So it's, while we see every FDA newsletter that goes out there, see who exploited exploited COVID for their own benefit and gain. It's very visible people. It's,
Wow.
Alex Jones got FDA warning letters, and Jim Baker, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker fame, got FDA warning letters for making claims about their dietary supplements that are going to cure COVID.
Wow.
So, you get to see the bad and the ugly,
Yeah.
and say, I want to be part of a culture, and I want to foment a culture that isn't that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really fascinating that you get to see the dark underbelly of the herbal, the commercialization of herbalism. If we take a step back a little bit, you mentioned that you started off with wildcrafting. What was your herbal journey like? Because I know that you've studied with some really cool people.
Yeah, I was 20 and started studying at American School of Herbalism, which existed in Santa Cruz, and was this really wonderful, exceptional cadre of educator practitioners, founded by Christopher Hobbs and Michael Tierra, and had some real notable industry contributors teaching there, Roy Upton and Bill Schoenbart and Thomas Avery Guerin, who are all really, still strong colleagues and good friends, really dear close friends. Like a lot of the educators who were my ground floor are still people that I love and admire. And some of them are in their late 70s and 80s and still kicking ass and, making deep inquiry into herbal medicine and continue to make contributions. So they were my foundation, and they're still like these pillars of people that I look up to, not because of what they did, but because they're still questing to make good herbal medicine available. But there's quite a few women who were midwives who are educators, and also licensed acupuncturist. Leslie Tierra is another educator who was part of that. And so we studied Chinese medicine, Western herbal medicine, Western phytotherapy. It also got a deep immersion into the local flora of California. And I started, as soon as I started at school, like within 6 months, was doing an apprenticeship with Thomas Avery Guerin, who has put out these really great using Western herbs and Chinese medicine books. And he had a herbal apothecary in his home. And I was 20, 21, getting to work my tail off, driving around with him in Western states, wild harvesting plants, bringing them home, breaking them down, and turning them into medicine, and serving them locally to other practitioners and their patients. And quickly I was developing more relationship with the plant and their therapeutic applications, and that was a vehicle for me learning to express them and taking them in my own life and giving them to other people and seeing what kind of results they got. Before it was clinical, it was more of a folk expression of herbalism with some rooting in traditional Chinese medicine. So feel really blessed and thankful that I got to do that. And that's still a reference point for me. And I still go to some of those places to Wild Harvest that I was taken, and still connect with those places. Some places I've chosen to not harvest anymore, but still like to go and connect with those landscapes because they've been part of the rhythm of my life for 25 years now. And many of those plants we've chosen to not include, maybe they were in early iterations of our products, but we took them out because of scalability. It's one thing when you're making a quart of something and are going to include it in 2 gallons of a proprietary formula. And it's another when you're making 20 gallons of that same thing. And this was in the era BI, before Instagram. And before people were saying, it's really awesome to go forage and harvest these things. It doesn't matter if you know what to do with them. So I know there's other reasons that people are critical of wild harvesting, and I respect those too, but some of the seeing egregious, trendy wildcrafting has turned me off to wildcrafting.
So. Yeah. So on the topic of scalability, I know that you're passionate about utilizing both botanical analogs and commerce as substitutes for popular plants to wild harvest. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. The this represents that pivot. For so long we're looking at how can we use. The first class I went to, Thomas and Michael Tierra were standing there, and they're like, "This is frontier. This is frontier that we have all these stones to turn over of how can we use native flora in place of traditional Chinese herbs. So how can we substitute things that may be difficult to access or just out of a bioregional ethos and use them instead of that which is in commerce and traditional Chinese medicine." That's still exciting to me. And, that hooked me when I heard that. I was like, well, this is really compelling. And that's never stopped being compelling. Inversely, when you look at the sustainability of wild harvesting, especially if you want to bring it into commerce or it's becoming really popular, we want to look at what herbs in commerce that, what is easy to grow relatively efficiently, that may be a meaningful substitute. And so what hasn't been grown, is also an important inquiry. So, some examples for that, an herb that I was really turned on to early on was Aurelia californica, or elk clover. It's this really powerful, it's one of a small handful of ginseng family plants in the Aureliaceae that grow in the United States, continental United States. It may be the only one that grows in California. And, it's a really powerful herb that is supportive in ways for respiratory, digestive, endocrine system. It is, like many plants, it was mythologized and supported by Michael Moore, and a lot of people took what he had to share about it, used it, and a lot of his student acolytes and people who lived near it shared information and started to adopt it and introduce it into their formulary. And, you started to think, what if everybody wanted to do this and wanted to harvest it? It would quickly be decimated. And it's a powerful, beautiful herb. So what has similar attributes? How can we look at herbs that are from the same family, have similar flavor and nature and qi from a East Asian medical perspective, maybe similar constituents? So what kind of conceptual and practical bridges can we build that may or may not always be related by phylogeny or botany or supported by biochemistry, but are going to elicit a similar result? And this in TCM, in East Asian pharmacopoeia or materia medicas, you'll see acceptable substitutes. And you'll commonly see acceptable substitutes that are not related botanically anywhere close. An example is Hohuanhua, Albizia flower. A preferred species that is more sustainable in China is magnolia flowers that are used for liver qi regulation, mood elevation. And you'll see them both in commerce in the West as Hohuanhua. So you'll see a magnolia flower and an albizia flower that are acceptable to use in place of each other. So in mapping these considerations out, what can we use in place for or build out in commerce? And there's not a nails it substitute for Aurelia, but you may consider using things like elecampane. What it's not as sexy, it's not as glamorous. It doesn't grow in redwood riparian areas that are enchanted forests, but it's really practical and it's really easy to grow. And the therapeutic potential outcomes and the herbs that you can formulate in conjunction with either inula or elecampane flowers, Xuanfuhua, or the root, have similarities. There's also differences, but that's an example.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that you're making that inquiry for yourself and your business, as well as all the classes that you teach and the people that you reach. It's certainly an area of concern within the herbal commerce realm, and as herbalists, a responsibility that we need to take towards our plants that we utilize and work with.
Yeah. Another example like this really beautiful gentian, the gentiana that grow up here in the High Sierra that I like to grow, and I've used them therapeutically for years. And I'm like, I'm done harvesting these. We can get gentiana that's grown, in other places. It might be grown in other continents, which has its own ecological detriments. So.
All right. Did you get cut off saying anything? We could just start right back where we were.
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So we'll keep on going. Yeah. So the example of Aurelia, as well as the gentiana, you noted the question of wondering what is easy to grow and cultivating that. And I'm curious, what are some of the botanicals that you're growing on your farm right now?
We're growing elecampane. We're growing inula. We planted up. People told us we're crazy. I won't disagree. Lemon balm, catnip. We have rows of these. We have, we're up to about 20 rows now. Blue vervain is blooming right now, which is really exciting and making me really happy. And the other part of growing these is I'm putting these things in my, putting fresh herbs in my tea all day. And I really like cold infusions, and growing Tulsi and picking off the flowers and having cold infusion of Tulsi all day long is really good. And with no shortage of stressors, we need more things to keep our liver chi moving than ever. Some of these aromatic botanicals that relax tension are things that we're living more authentically than we have in the past. We planted up yarrow and echinacea and valerian and ashwagandha. Fresh ashwagandha is really, really heavenly. And it's just delightfully aromatic. That is fresh root being processed and harvested. With the harvest.
That's quite the list of beautiful plants, and most of them I notice are like really relaxing. Some of those liver chi moving that you were mentioning, nervines, a lot of beautiful nervines, and I'm just picturing the blue vervain in flower, and sounds amazing.
Yeah, and it combines so well with skullcap, which we're also growing for so many things. That I've observed some other herbalists. I've observed David Winston likes to pair those, and that's something that at some point I had a gravitation towards, and feel like they're a dwayao. They're friends. They are combined better than the sum of their parts.
Can you tell us what's dwayao?
Dwayao is a 2-herb form. It means paired herb, paired medicinal, and is a educational practice and study in traditional Chinese medicine, where you look at the interactions and therapeutic capabilities of 2 herbs in partnership with each other. And I've used this as a building block guidepost for looking at how to work with herbs in the West, and be able to mix and match and say, well, this has this flavor, nature, and chi, these constituents. I can use this in place, and that might be guided by knowing that Oregon grape has berberine in it, and so I'm going to use that as my cold bitter herb. And elecampane, is in the Asteraceae family and has fructooligosaccharides and is warm and acrid, and does these things in the body. And instead of using Huangbai philodendron or its berberine component and Sangju or Atractylotus, which is also in the Asteraceae family and has all these constituents, I can use that warm acrid and cold bitter pairing east-west, either or, to achieve similar therapeutic benefits for treatment of dampness and heat in all three burners. So, so that's a common way that looking at the building blocks of formulas is taught in traditional Chinese medicine. It's how these herbs partner with each other and aren't just used as discrete entities or bigger formulas. So, another classic Chinese one that is Xiaoyao Gan Xiao Tang, which is peony and licorice. And then how does peony interact with guajer or cinnamon twig? How does peony interact with buplurum or chaihu? Kind of puts the brakes on it. And there's these ways that these herbs dance together really well and have been studied and understood for a couple thousand years. And so I like to teach classes for Western herbalists of how to use these models for consideration for their formulation practices.
Yeah. So one of the ways that you're considering combining Western herbs within Chinese medicine formulas is using this language of 对药, or the plants that dance really well with each other, and considering the nature, temperature, and qi of the plants. Yeah. So what are some of the classical or non-classical Chinese medicine formulas that you've modified with Western herbs, and how have you modified them?
There's two pathways to that question. There's what do I do clinically with people when I'm more active? Since we moved up here a year and a half ago, I have not been practicing as much, but was regularly formulating on the fly as a clinician or in our shop. And so there's what do I do every day? And some of the building blocks are very classically informed. Have kind of dove deep into Shang Han Lun, Jingguo Yaola, canonical Chinese herb studies with a variety of teachers, including Arnaud Verslies, is who I spent the most time studying with. And it's become, probably in the past 10 years, I'll say a strong intellectual current in contemporary traditional East Asian medical or Chinese medical studies. I say East Asian because a lot of really potent work studying these has been done or practiced in Japan or Vietnam or Korea. And the currents of scholarship are coming from those places too. Kampo is Japanese herbal medicine. It's all based on 2,000-year-old Chinese herbal medicine, but it's still very much a Japanese way of expressing it. So studying those styles and those formulas, that form the foundation corpus of TCM formulation. And so, those buplurum formulas and the formula families associated, the guajer cinnamon twig formula families are probably what I use the most, in addition to lots of ginseng formulas or aconite formulas. And so modifying those on the regular is a regular practice. For our company, things that we've made proprietary products, have developed some buplurum based formulas and have developed some guajer or cinnamon twig based formulas. And a favorite formula of mine that is widely used, is probably the most common, I've been told the most common household herbal remedy in China is rectify the qi, or huaxiang zhengqi, which contains agastache or pagostemy. Pagostemy is, here's another example of not botanically related acceptable substitutes. Pagostemy being patchouli plant and agastache being in the mint family. Anise hyssop is its kind of name in trade, commerce, Western herbalism. And so we made a variation in tincture of this formula. It's widely used for a variety of forms of digestive upset, and that are acute digestive upset from various ways that one might choose to eat poorly, drink in excess, or maybe be exposed to unhygienic things that influence their digestion, so that are disruptive to their digestion. So it helps regulate the function of digestion. And as one of my teachers, I always like to think of this like, the Chinese invented functional medicine. You don't need a lab test to do it. You're upregulating function of all these systems, and you're using tongue and pulse. And don't let somebody sell you a $300 lab test to tell you that you need, warm acrid herbs and cold bitter herbs to treat dampness and heat in your large intestine, and then, like we just talked about. Where was I? Oh yeah, rectify the qi. So the Agastashi Rectify the Qi, we made a proprietary product that, we use fresh herbs, and I think some of the attributes of those fresh herbs makes it a stronger formula than tea pills from China. One of our motivations for doing the formulations that we've done is that a lot of TCM formulas and TCM formulas provided to TCM practitioners in the West do a really good job slowly. And so the tincture as a delivery system helps somebody feel better more quickly, while other facets of the formula are having a cumulative effect. And if you can experience relief of your symptoms and relief of your suffering efficiently, you're going to have buy-in to the herbal therapies more quickly. And some of the buchlorum formulas that, probably the best-selling buchlorum-based formula in the West is xiaoyaosan, which regulates the liver qi, supplements the blood, and supplements the spleen qi with buchlorum, chaihu, dangui, angelica, tractylotus, poria, and boha, regular mint. And we've made a modification of that to accentuate its mood elevating component by adding albizia and lemon balm and some rhodiola.
Nice.
Which is nice. And we've made a formula based on sinesan, which is also a buchlorum-based formula for easing tension and discomfort associated with neck, shoulders, head. It has many more applications that I won't mention, but it includes sinesan, which is buchlorum, peony, bitter orange, and licorice, plus we put blue vervain and skullcap in that. It's dynamic stuff.
Yeah.
So I could keep going. We have a bunch of things like that I like to talk about.
I love that you have these formulas memorized. You're just rattling them off. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, don't you?
Some of them, not all of them.
You just did you forget it all after the test?
Yes.
How many formula related questions were on your licensing exam?
Not that many, really. There were maybe 200 questions and maybe only 15 questions about formulas. Not that many.
That's amazing. When I took it, that's all I wanted to study. There's 3 questions on my licensing exam.
Wow.
Yeah. And the answer was they were all related to Ganmai Datsao Tong.
Oh, well, that's a really easy one.
Which, I'll make a plug for, it's licorice, wheat, sprouted wheat, and jujube formula.
Right.
And, a great endorsement that Michael Tierra said this to me once. He's like, I think everybody, should try, like, for a week, drinking jujube date and licorice tea, and just see how powerful that is. Try the regular Chinese doses of that, or cook your porridge in it, and see how tranquilizing it is, how steady your energy it is, how supplementing your qi. And I think that the jujube date, part of why those are included in formulas, it's just like a big shot of glucose to your brain right away, so you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
are you growing jujube?
We're not. We are, haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
It freezes where we are.
Oh.
So, you know, while it is sweltering now, while we're like in the 90s, as far as we can see on the temperature event horizon or looking back, it feels like a desert, but it freezes in the winter. So there's certain things that aren't going to do that well.
Yeah. You mentioned guizhi and chaihu formula families, or the cinnamon twig and bupleurum formula families. Can you talk a little bit more about formula families and how you consider and approach those?
Yeah, so looking at the lead herb in a formula construction and its functions and roles for guiding therapeutic action, there's different organizational rationale for that. And in the lineage that I studied with Arnaud, he presented this as based on his teachers and his particular lineage that he was holding, which is not how I practice currently necessarily, but they had very strong and strict pulse associations with each formula. So, wiry pulse on the left guan chaihu formula, floating pulse on the sun position, guizhi formula. And you might combine formulas, but if you had one of these, you're gonna let that be your primary guide to where within the 6 stages and the association between these formulas, that is the differential diagnostic system of the Shanghanlun, is based on not 6 conformations, which it's sometimes taught as, and there's scholarly disagreement whether that's appropriate. I happen to identify to it and relate to it intellectually. That is kind of constitutional typing based on these. Educator Huang Huang, you might be familiar with his teaching, which I really relate to and enjoy, and has helped me develop tools that I like. But he's criticized as maybe he made this stuff up, which is not bad as long as you epistemologically acknowledge that, I think. Anyway, so the six conformations, the 6 stages, will be associated. The Tai Yang will have multiple associated pulses that indicate, here's where you use a Ma Huang formula versus a cinnamon twig formula. Here's where, you use it is very algorithmic and very sophisticated. And the difficulty in learning it in the West is you need to calibrate to somebody who holds that lineage and feel hundreds and hundreds and thousands of pulses. And if you're in China working with somebody who's feeling 100 pulses a day and you get to match, it's a lot easier than traveling to seminars, doing it occasionally and having it be an intellectual study. So you might relate to that learning gap. And that, that's something that I like to convey to Western herbal audiences, is having studied in China and seen specialists in a hospital who are an MD herbalist, who's a cardiologist, and I have multiple examples of this, who is a cardiologist who focuses on hypertension. So 90% of the cases that they're seeing in any day are hypertensive cases, and getting to shadow them, seeing 50 people in a day, seeing their charts, hearing their signs and symptoms, and seeing the amount of time that the herbalist spends with them before composing a prescription and making some dietary recommendations is pretty truncated. And it's very pulse-centric, but they've already gathered the intake. And so it's not a 3-hour mind walk through their trauma, past lives, and fine-tuning every aspect of their diet. It's herbal medicine as medicine, and pulse is a leading diagnostic indicator. integrating traditional practice and modern research. I know not everybody agrees with that in Chinese medicine as the way to practice, but I think it's a useful pillar of how herbal medicine can be expressed in a sophisticated way.
Yeah. So how has witnessing that affected your clinical practice here in the States?
Witnessing that is strengthened my convictions around integrative medicine. And, you know, I like to be really hands-on. I like to develop a therapeutic relationship. I like to, if I like somebody, I may want to spend a lot of time educating them about diet and hearing about their stuff and getting to know them. But as a herbal clinician, technician, prescriber, I don't always feel like I need to spend a lot of time with people to arrive at what I ultimately think is going to serve them the best. And so, yeah, I feel like a lot of times I see somebody come in, I read their intake form, and I have a set of 5 to 10 questions that's going to get me to probably 90% of what I think they need without overthinking it. And it doesn't mean I cure everybody's everything, but that's my style. And so I think I may give people the most honest value of my skill set and in a streamlined way. And so there's both a confidence in the medicine and the set of diagnostic tools and a confidence in my ability to say, great, you know, here we are. I'm going to ask you 5 or 10 questions, and I'm going to give you something that I have a conviction is going to serve your health. And that's not the only way I practice, but that's a way that I practice that is informed by, you know, my own study and seeing expressions of that medicine.
Yeah. And would that be within the brick and mortar 5 Flavors shop that you had in Oakland?
Yeah, I also had a clinical space there.
Right. Yeah. So within the clinical space, would that be alongside the practice of acupuncture? Is the prescribing Chinese herbal or other herbal formulas?
Both. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I just do herb consultations and not do acupuncture.
Nice. So there's quite a bit of flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Sweet. So I noted that there's some common Western nervines or commatives that you wanted to explore from a Chinese medicine or Southeast Asian medicine perspective around their energetics.
Yeah, sure. We've already hinted around those a lot. And you know, one nomenclatural commentary that I have is what the word energetics means. And many sinological scholars, you know, that is people who study the intersection of Chinese medicine and Chinese language, critique the use of the word energetics because energy exists in the ether is their feedback. This isn't shooting that down. It's just I think it's a meaningful topic, and that what Chinese medicine does is corporeal and physical and not etheric. And because the use in the West of the term energy denotes a non-corporeal, you know, because it's loaded and charged in so many other ways, because it may denote magic. It's using the term energy to denote. We skipped out a little bit for a minute there, right?
We skipped out a little bit, yeah. So last thing I heard, I'll just make a little X, was denoting magic.
Yeah, so you know, magic or that which we don't understand, and the contrast is that the flavor nature qi, the warming flavors, flavors very much denote action. Flavors don't really, they may correspond to flavors we perceive, and they might correspond to flavor receptors and cascades of events in our body that relate to that. But when you see this language in Chinese medicine, it's, you know, when you see bitter, it means it's dispersing and draining. Or when you see acrid, it means it's dispersing. And when you see sweet, it means it's supplementing. It doesn't mean this is how you're going to perceive it in the Western palate. And so that's not an energy. That's a thing that it does. You know, it's a code for the herbalist to understand. So, but if I start using the word energy, I'm talking about Chinese medicine, just to confuse the listener. So skullcap, you know, skullcap is very much a bitter herb and draining. And, you know, it's interesting that you'll see it show up as a nervine that supplements, nourishes, restores the nervous system. I've never seen commentators denote it as sweet, but, you know, you could. That's how you would think about it if you're a conceptual framework. When I think of a sweet nervine, I think of wild oats, you know, the supplementing quality, the restorative quality to the nervous system in conjunction with the, you know, sedating, calmative function. So it might be considered sweet and salty. So most of the mints, like in Chinese medicine, many mints in Chinese medicine do regulate the liver qi. And so the catnip, lemon balm, you would consider them to be acrid and cool, and relax the liver qi, calm the mind, and you know, so for use in irritability, and you know, for use with irritability, maybe in a premenstrual context is a classic place to reference the experience of congested liver qi. Looking at the distribution of channels and the terrain of the body, you know, we were talking about blue vervain and skullcap being herbs that traverse the gallbladder and triple warmer channels in the head, the temporal aspect of the head, the neck, shoulders, being the Shaoyang distribution, you know, that is the gallbladder, triple warmer, and then the Taiyang bladder, small intestine distributions closer to the spine, and the nape of the neck, you know, being things that can also be influenced by these, but I think they're largely Shaoyang. So, you know, what's going on in here? Different kinds of head discomfort, different kinds of tendinomuscular things that they may provide a lot of relief. Also cognitive and emotional disruptions of different sorts. They're antispasmodics. So I would also consider these herbs that alleviate wind. You see different kinds of, can I say this? Muscular spasm and, you know, nervous system dysfunction that results in spasms, tics, expressions such as, you know, I'll just say some of these things, if they need to be edited out, they can be edited out. You know, things such as tic spasms, but also verbal tics, such as Tourette's, you know, is something that I see these be useful for. And, you know, disruptions to consciousness due to external excitation, such as too much time on digital media syndrome. Zoom syndrome was, I think that entered the lexicon this year. I think I got it real bad right now. I'm gonna have to go out to the garden. It's not you, it's the platform.
I love how you said the blue vervain and scutellaria traversing the Shaoyang. I love that imagery.
Yeah, so one thing that we don't have a great sustainable substitute for is medicinal orchids. And, you know, since anybody I know is studying herbal medicine, I said, you know, don't use lady slipper. They already burned through lady slipper in commerce. And I think that people are starting to cultivate. Here's one that we can cultivate that I know people who cultivate and use, and I have access to cultivate it in small amounts. But don't go harvest this, kids. Stream orchid, Epipectus gigantea, is really profound and sought after by herbalists who know about it as a kind of propho-restorative mood elevator, much like Lady Slipper, much like Tianma, or Gastrodia, or Shihu. You know, if we look at the way orchids are used in traditional Chinese medicine, it's really a good guide for things that have a lot of cultural esteem as tonics, as rejuvenatives, as well as things that are useful therapeutically for, you know, cardiovascular system, cardiovascular nervous system intersection. So there's a place where we have these things that like supplement the fluids, alleviate wind, but unfortunately they're not widely available, and but they should be, because they're such profound medicines.
So that's an area where still seeking a Western analog or a different plant to step into its place.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I'm seeking it that hard, but I'm hoping, I'm wishing, I'm fomenting and advocating.
Yeah. Along those lines, then, what are your, having walked in so many different circles, and you're able to bridge the worlds of Chinese herbal medicine or East Asian herbal medicine and Western herbalism, what's your view of what's coming next in the herbal world? Where are we going? Where are we headed?
What's coming next? You know, I think that it's hard to see that separately from trajectories of, you know, one answer for me is what's happening next with the enterprise that I run. And then what's happening next on the planet is the bigger, more important question. So what's happening on sustainability frontiers? What's happening in access? You know, that is ACCESS, access to botanical medicine, not just in a global trade perspective, but how can we make sure more people are having access to these tools and resources and are educated how to use them? You know, how can we, you know, I'm comfortable being a capitalist. I'm also have my doubts as to the sustainability of capitalism, global capitalism, and, you know, like to line up that long shot, and think that a lot of people are currently being faced with and going to continue to be faced with less access to commodities of all sorts. And so having an opportunity to live closer to sustainable to cultivate plants that are relatively easy to cultivate in many, many climates, are easy to cultivate as annuals, you know, really demonstrate that they want to grow, to me says, like, let's use these, and let's get these out there for more people. You know, so that's why you say, it sounds like you have a lot of commotatives out there. Like, that's the future. When you say, what's the future of herbal medicine? You know, it's a lot more of these being accessible to more people, a lot more California poppy, which I haven't talked about. If I was going to get a tattoo on my face, it would be a California poppy.
Which, for our listeners, is the logo for Five Flavors, is California poppy.
It's part of it, yeah. So Eschscholzia California is just such a profound medicine. You know, such a dynamic tool that, you know, I think more people should have access to. It's never gotten trendy in the herbal world, which is, you know, a lot of companies have it in their products. So, you know, the leading companies that hold the most esteem and market share have it in their products, in many products oftentimes, because it's so damn effective and because it's really easy to grow, you know, because from a sustainability perspective, it doesn't require hyper-conditioned soil or 3 seasons of growth. It, you know, you scatter the seeds in the dirt and it'll grow. So, so, you know, that's one area of the future. Another aspect of the future is herbs being welcomed into integrative medicine is a future I'm a big enthusiast of, related to access. I was on the board of directors for 6 or 7 years of integrative medicine for the underserved, which is a wonderful organization. I encourage all listeners to check out im4us.org, and go to the annual conference. This year it's digital again, but hopefully next year it'll be in person. Really profound, diverse organization, in that the membership and participation is fairly professionally diverse. It's a lot of physicians working in federally qualified health centers, wow, and allied health professionals looking at how to get good quality integrative medicine to as many people as possible. So we're looking at low cost, low input, high yield delivery systems. And so that's part of what we just talked about with sustainability and herbs, and how to deliver those to more people. And one of those forums is through people who are already accessing people and providing them healthcare services, who are already seeing 30, 40 people a day and influencing their decisions, their health decisions. Another frontier is also, entering into formularies and advancing herb-drug interactions. Something Ingrid and I love to teach together about is herb-drug interaction courses that aren't just, who's the boogeyman in the room, like how to be risk averse, but also how can we create therapeutic strategies and critical thinking pathways, an interdisciplinary conversation between trained herbalists and other types of allied health professionals, physicians, psychiatrists, etc., that aren't prescribing herbs or recommending them. A large part of my practice historically has been people with fairly significant mental health concerns, many of which are on, or most of which are on, significant psychiatric medications. And so understanding how to support people who this is part of the definition of their life, and also how to communicate with them or support them in communicating with their psychiatrists about their choices, their wishes, and their therapeutic treatment plan that's at the intersection of different clinicians guiding them. So that's a frontier that I hope to instigate.
Yeah. So you touched on a couple of different frontiers as far as sustainable agriculture and sustainable herbalism moving forward in commerce, and the integrative model and herbal access. And sounds like we've got lots of different kinds of terrain to traverse moving forward from here.
One other frontier that is an old frontier, but it's something we do that we have a lot of esteem with, is our herbal pharmacy. And making custom formulation more accessible, and being a gatekeeper in support of a wide variety of practitioners having access to a dynamic materia medica that they don't have to stock themselves, is something that we deeply care about, we're very passionate about, and have poured some blood, sweat, and tears over. And it's not new, it's like we tip our hat to Chinese herbal pharmacies have been part of the culture in California since the 1850s. There's still some and in Oregon too, there's still some vestiges of old herbal pharmacies that you can still go see that have been there since the gold rush. So, these are pillars of inspiration for us. But also if you talk to pharmacists who are trained in the 1950s or before that, they'll say, yeah, I took pharmacognosy classes where I had to be able to identify raw botanical materials because I'd be dispensing them. And so that's been kind of washed out of our cultural heritage. And so when we're making things available street level or via mail, that's part of the heart of what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your ability to distill all of this information and your experiences into this beautiful offering for the herbal community and our world community at large. Will you share us some music?
Oh, yeah.
And or is there anything else that you would like to share?
I'll tip my hat. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And thanks to Mountain Rose. So we tip our hat to Mountain Rose. And we source a lot of our herbs from Mountain Rose that we manufacture with. And so that makes us feel good. We know about the quality that's going and the discipline that's going into, you know, providing consistent resources and the fomenting of agriculture that Mountain Rose does. I think is something that is really, really deeply inspirational for us. That they're not just buying herbs from somewhere, that they're actually going out through the United States and through the world and saying, hey, we need more of this stuff, and we want to foment and encourage good agricultural practices, high quality agriculture. And so that's another frontier. Like a frontier of herbal medicine is increasing demand, because this stuff really works, it really helps people. And, you know, so I appreciate getting to have an allyship with, you know, Mountain Rose and other companies in, you know, building that future where there's more good quality botanicals getting planted out and dispensed.
Beautiful.
Okay. Do you want to see my face or my fingers?
It's up to you, Ben.
This wasn't part of my plan, but this is fun. It's a song about a wild crafter, and it's a Norman Blake tune, who's from northern Georgia, which hats off to the Georgia herbal community, which has lots of good, kind people who genuinely exhibit Southern hospitality if you're ever down there. But this is also a tip of the hat to Tony Rice, who popularized the song too, and added some of the flourishes. Let's see what happens. I might go like this. Okay. Okay. Starting over here. Mason, starting over. About 3 miles from the Bucktail Yard, the reverse curve of town. Little ways back from the railroad tracks, Sullivan's sack was found down by the higher ground. You can't see him every day walking down the line. Big old sack across his back, long hair down behind. Speaking his worried mind. Long way from the Delta to the North Georgia hills. Tow sack full of ginseng won't pay my traveling bill. I'm too old to ride the rails, thumb the road alone. Guess I'll never make it back to home. My Mississippi muddy water Delta home. My Mississippi muddy water Delta home. Winter things get too cold, damp makes me ill. Get no roots on the mountainside when the ground froze hard and still. Got to dig from the side of the hill. Summer things will warm up, companies will pay high. Dig enough roots to pay my bills, sing these mountains goodbye. Then he said with a sigh. Long way from the Delta to the North Georgia hills. Tow sack full of ginseng won't pay my traveling bill. I'm too old to ride the rail, thumb the road alone. Guess I never make it back home. My Mississippi muddy water Delta home. So that's Ginseng Sullivan.
Ginseng Sullivan.
Ginseng, like ginseng.
Yeah, there's even a little instructional part about dig from the side of the hill.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's a song about you and your youth, the wild crafting Ben.
Yeah, I once went out and hung out with a family member of mine, kinfolk of mine from the West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, tri-state area. And my cousin had worked in traveling medicine shows where they sold real snake oil in the 40s. And he sang, and he did like an old timer thing with his wife. And that's what he did. And he was in his early 80s when I hung out with him. And he was like, we're going to go to the, what did he call it? Like a flea market. And I went with him for a weekend to the Hillbilly Flea Market. And at the Hillbilly Flea Market was unregistered guns, hunting dogs, people's canned vegetables, my cousin in his 80s, and I playing along with him, singing his songs, and people who were like old alcoholics who camped out in the woods and harvested ginseng and sold them to a broker. And so, got to see that like illicit root digger tradition and illicit brokerage a little bit up close, and talk to these guys and see guys coming up, like watching them exchange money for some American ginseng that was not that much bigger than my thumb, getting paid for it, and know that they were going to go buy more booze with it. It's a trip. So I have a different frame of reference aside from my own wild harvesting exploits.
You've got the best stories, Ben. Pretty amazing.
They color my world.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your music, sharing your stories, sharing your experience, and sharing so much with us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. You can email me at lingjiling@gmail.com or contact me via jilinglin.com. And happy herbal adventures. See you next month. Cheers.